I wanna shoot, baby.
Deadpool, the merc with a mouth, stands out among the pantheon of comic book characters as a paradox, a wisecracking anti-hero who defies the conventions of traditional superheroes.
You? 10. Okay, guys, let's get out there and make a difference. You know what to do.
Unlike most characters, Deadpool does not seek redemption or aspire to higher ideals. Instead, he embraces his flaws, uses humor as his weapon, and breaks the fourth wall to engage directly with the audience. What makes Deadpool so fascinating to the modern world? Through a psychological, philosophical, and cultural lens, we can unravel the deeper reasons behind his popularity and understand why he resonates with audiences today. At its core, Deadpool's character is a postmodern critique of the superhero genre itself. While traditional heroes like Superman or Captain America embody ideals of truth, justice, and moral clarity, Deadpool reflects a fragmented, ironic perspective on reality. He constantly breaks the fourth wall, reminding the audience that he is aware of being a fictional character within a story. This self-awareness is emblematic of the postmodern condition, where absolute truths are questioned and everything is subject to interpretation. Philosopher Jean Baudrillard, in his work on simulacra and simulation, argued that in the postmodern world, reality itself becomes a play of images and signs without a stable reference point. Deadpool epitomizes this idea. His constant quips, pop culture references, and meta-commentary on the nature of his own existence underscore the notion that there are no absolute meanings, only layers of irony and self-reflexivity. By breaking the fourth wall and engaging with the audience, Deadpool challenges the traditional boundaries of storytelling, echoing the postmodern idea that all narratives are constructed. This makes him a character uniquely suited to a world that increasingly views reality as fluid, malleable, and open to interpretation. From a psychological perspective, Deadpool taps into the archetype of the anti-hero, a figure who embodies flaws, vices, and a blatant disregard for societal norms. Unlike conventional heroes, anti-heroes are not driven by altruism but by self-interest, vengeance, or existential boredom. This complexity makes them relatable in a way that traditional heroes often are not. Deadpool's psyche is particularly intriguing because of his relationship with trauma and humor. Carl Jung, a prominent psychologist, emphasized the importance of the shadow, the darker, hidden aspects of oneself that are often repressed. Deadpool, however, embraces his shadow with full force. He uses humor as a coping mechanism to deal with his disfigurement, terminal illness, and the emotional scars of his past. His constant wisecracking and irreverence are not just comedy, but a defense mechanism against the darkness within and around him. Moreover, Deadpool's psychological appeal lies in his refusal to conform to traditional norms. He embodies the existential idea presented by Friedrich Nietzsche, "Become who you are." In a world that increasingly values authenticity, Deadpool's unapologetic embrace of his flaws, his tendency to make morally ambiguous choices, and his rejection of the conventional superhero mold make him a symbol of personal freedom and individuality. He does not strive to be a perfect hero. Instead, he exists on his own terms, an embodiment of Nietzschean self-overcoming. Let's spend a second down memory lane. Deadpool's origin story is a masterclass in taking the conventional superhero narrative and turning it completely on its head. Unlike the bright, shining origins of a Superman or a Captain America, Deadpool's beginnings are steeped in darkness, desperation, and just the right amount of black humor. In the 2016 movie, Wade Wilson is introduced as a mercenary diagnosed with terminal cancer, a man with nothing left to lose. When he's offered a chance at a cure, he doesn't become the hero we're used to seeing. No, Wade is subjected to a torturous experiment that triggers a mutant healing factor, making him virtually immortal but hideously disfigured. Now here's where Deadpool separates himself from the typical tragic backstory. In the comics, this same experiment strips him not just of his looks, but of his sanity, leaving him with a face like Freddy Krueger and a mind that constantly breaks the fourth wall. What makes Deadpool's story so relatable, so human, is that he's not driven by a quest for justice or revenge. He's fueled by the messy, complicated feelings we all have: anger, spite, a need for self-acceptance, and most importantly, a desire to find humor in the darkest moments. Deadpool isn't the hero who rises above his suffering. He revels in it. He's the part of us that laughs in the face of tragedy because, deep down, we all know that sometimes laughter is the only weapon left. Rooting for a character like Deadpool, especially in the infamous Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe, seems counterintuitive at first glance. In this storyline, Deadpool goes on a rampage, taking down the very heroes we're conditioned to idolize. He kills Spider-Man with a shot to the head, devises elaborate traps for the X-Men, and even outsmarts the likes of Iron Man and Thor. It's graphic, violent, and ruthless, a complete dismantling of the superhero mythos. So, why do we find ourselves rooting for Deadpool in this blood-soaked spectacle? Because he represents the destruction of perfection, a rebellion against the unattainable standards set by classic superheroes. In a world where heroes are often paragons of virtue, Deadpool becomes a symbol of everything flawed, unpredictable, and genuinely human. He is not the shining knight, but the court jester who exposes the absurdity of the hero's journey itself. Consider Albert Camus' idea from the myth of Sisyphus. The struggle itself toward the heights is enough to fill a man's heart. Deadpool's massacre of the Marvel Universe isn't a journey towards heroism. It's a struggle against the very narrative that paints him as the villain. In this story, Deadpool knows he's trapped in a comic, manipulated for entertainment, and he decides to tear down the entire system in protest. It's this existential rebellion that resonates. Deadpool exposes the artificial nature of the superhero world, challenging us to rethink our obsession with perfection. Watching him take down these untouchable icons is cathartic. It's a rejection of the superficial ideals these heroes represent. Deadpool doesn't offer us heroism in a traditional sense. He offers a raw, unfiltered version of existence, warts and all. And in that, we find something oddly relatable, a glimpse of ourselves in all our flawed, chaotic glory. Deadpool also resonates with the philosophy of existentialism, particularly the absurdist ideas of Albert Camus. In the myth of Sisyphus, Camus argues that life is inherently meaningless, but humans continue to search for meaning despite this. Deadpool embodies this absurdist perspective. He understands that his existence as a comic book character is inherently absurd, yet he continues to fight, quip, and survive. Deadpool's immortality is a curse rather than a blessing, trapping him in an eternal loop of violence, pain, and regeneration. Yet, instead of succumbing to despair, he chooses to laugh at the absurdity of his situation. His humor becomes a form of rebellion against a universe that makes no sense. When Deadpool quips, life is an endless series of train wrecks with only brief, commercial-like breaks of happiness, he echoes Camus' assertion that the only way to confront the absurd is through defiance and embracing life's chaos with a smile. Unlike other anti-heroes who may brood or seek redemption, Deadpool finds solace in the chaos. In this way, he aligns with characters like Rick Sanchez from Rick and Morty or BoJack Horseman from the eponymous show, who grapple with their own existential crises by wielding irony, humor, and self-awareness. These characters, like Deadpool, are painfully aware of their flaws and the absurdity of existence, and they respond not with resignation but with irreverence and wit. Deadpool's character is also a critique of the traditional heroic ideals embodied by other superheroes. Heroes like Spider-Man or Captain America are often presented as paragons of virtue, driven by a clear moral compass. Deadpool, however, operates in a morally gray area, making choices based on personal gain or amusement rather than any grand ethical code. This ambiguity reflects the contemporary world's skepticism towards absolute moral authority. As philosopher Soren Kierkegaard pointed out, anxiety is the dizziness of freedom. Deadpool embodies this dizziness, the freedom to choose without a guiding principle, to act on impulse, to reject societal expectations. His actions are not governed by a code of honor or duty. They are spontaneous, unpredictable, and often selfish. Yet, This moral flexibility is part of what makes Deadpool so fascinating. He forces the audience to confront uncomfortable questions about the nature of heroism. Is a hero defined by their actions or their motivations? Can someone who does bad things still be a good person? These questions have been explored by other morally ambiguous characters like Tony Soprano from The Sopranos or Dexter Morgan from Dexter. However, while these characters struggle with their duality, Deadpool revels in it, showing that heroism can be messy, complicated, and deeply human. Deadpool's appeal also lies in his role as a rebel against authority and convention. In an era of increasing disillusionment with political, social, and cultural institutions, Deadpool represents a form of rebellion that is both cathartic and entertaining. He mocks authority figures, defies societal expectations, and even breaks the rules of his own narrative universe. Historically, figures like Robin Hood or Loki from Norse mythology have played similar roles, embodying a spirit of defiance and challenging the status quo. Deadpool, however, adds a contemporary twist by combining rebellion with humor and meta-commentary, making his defiance feel fresh and relevant. He doesn't just challenge authority, he ridicules it, dismantling the facade of seriousness that often surrounds power. This rebelliousness is also seen in other modern anti-heroes like Deadshot from Suicide Squad or V from V for Vendetta. While these characters also reject conventional norms, Deadpool's unique combination of humor, violence, and self-awareness gives him a unique place in this lineage of rebels. His antics invite us to question the value of seriousness, to recognize the absurdity of our own constraints, and to find laughter even in defiance. Deadpool's fourth wall breaking is not just a gimmick, it is a manifestation of the modern audience's desire for control over the narrative. In an age where consumers demand more interactive and personalized content, Deadpool offers an experience where the audience feels acknowledged and engaged. By directly addressing viewers, he blurs the line between fiction and reality, creating a unique bond with the audience. This technique mirrors how characters like Ferris Bueller from Ferris Bueller's Day Off engage with their audiences, creating a sense of camaraderie and complicity. However, Deadpool takes it a step further by not only acknowledging his fictional status, but actively mocking it, allowing the audience to be in on the joke. Deadpool's self-awareness and audience engagement reflect a deeper cultural trend, the shift from passive consumption of media to active participation. In a world dominated by social media, where everyone has a voice and a platform, Deadpool's interactions symbolize the audience's desire to influence the narrative, to be a part of the story, and to challenge the conventions of traditional storytelling. Finally, Deadpool embodies a unique liberation from suffering. He is a character who endures immense pain, both physical and emotional, but refuses to let that pain define him. Instead of wallowing in his suffering, he makes light of it, finding humor in even the darkest moments. This approach aligns with the Buddhist concept of dukkha, or suffering, which is an inherent part of life. The path to enlightenment, according to Buddhism, involves understanding and transcending suffering. Deadpool's irreverence, his jokes, and his refusal to take himself or his pain too seriously are a form of transcendence. He is not free from suffering, but he is liberated from the despair that often accompanies it. Characters like Tyrion Lannister from Game of Thrones share a similar resilience. Despite their suffering and the injustices they face, they maintain their wit, humor, and sense of self. They demonstrate that the greatest act of defiance in a world filled with pain and injustice is to laugh in its face, to refuse to be broken by it. Deadpool is more than just a comic book character. He is a cultural phenomenon that reflects the complexity of the modern world. He challenges traditional narratives, embraces moral ambiguity, and embodies a spirit of rebellion and self-awareness that speaks to a generation disillusioned by certainty and authority. He is a symbol of the absurdity of existence, the desire for control, and the liberation from suffering through humor. By analyzing Deadpool through psychological, philosophical, and cultural lenses, we can see why he resonates so deeply with contemporary audiences. He is not just a hero or an anti-hero, he is a mirror that reflects our complexities, our contradictions, and our endless fascination with the chaotic, unpredictable, and often absurd nature of reality itself. If this narrative resonated with you, do support us. Hit that like button, drop a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe. Thank you for staying with us to the end. See you in the next video on Plaid Chronicles.